Hi guys! I can't tell you how excited I am that fall is finally here, and it's sweater weather. Yay! So, you may or may not know that there is a new readathon going on this week in the booktube area of YouTube, and that is called Diversathon, the point of which is to try and read more diversely, read about experiences that are different from your own. And I could not even pretend to have time to participate in a readathon this week, but I really wanted to contribute in whatever small way I could, and so I'm doing that. The only way I know how, which is talking too much about manga. So here I am recommending some manga about diverse subjects. And I have divided this into 4 different categories. The first is class difference. The second is racial and cultural diversity. The third is gender and sexual diversity, and the final category is mental and physical disability. I have decided to limit this to just manga that are readily available in America, which is where I'm from, so I don't know that much about what's available in other countries, so I'm sorry about that. And the only exception is one out-of-print title that I just felt was way too important to not talk about, and of course I'll mention that when I get to that one. But otherwise, these are all in print and easily available in, your fine local book retailers. I have also decided to include 1 or 2 anime for each category because I can, and it's my list and not yours. If I don't happen to have access to one of these in my collection, I will put a picture of it up here, but I want to emphasize that these are not series I pirated. I do not condone pirating anything really, but especially these series, which are so important and really need all the support that they can get. Please, if you can afford it, go out and buy these. If you can't, request them at your local library. Even if you can afford them, request them at your local library. These are the types of series that your libraries want to know about and want to have in their collection. So please, support these in any way you are able to. Anyway, first category is class difference. Now, it's hard to find manga that deal with this, especially the type of stuff that gets licensed. Most people look to manga for escapist entertainment, of course. So, you really don't see much manga focusing on the working class or the poor. And I was only able to think of 1 manga and 1 anime that do so, and do so well. If you know of any manga that deal well with class difference and poverty, please leave a comment below so that other people know about them and so that I know about them. The manga that I'm going to recommend is probably one of the most popular manga that is on this list, and that is Ouran High School Host Club. This series is about a scholarship student named Haruhi Fujioka at the prestigious Ouran Academy for the exceptionally wealthy. One day, she's looking for someplace to study, and she wanders into the clubroom of the host club, where handsome, wealthy idol boys entertain wealthy idol girls by flirting and stuff, because it's a host club. And she accidentally ends up breaking a very expensive vase and having been mistaken for a boy by everyone in the host club. She is sort of indentured to them as a temporary host while she works off her debt. And this is a comedy series. It's very funny, and a lot of the humor is derived from the satire of contrasting Haruhi, who is sort of a normal working class to lower middle class girl, with these exceptionally wealthy gentlemen. The anime I'm going to recommend to you is a film by the late, great Satoshi Kon, who passed away far too young, but produced a handful of incredible masterpieces while he was alive, and one of those is this film, Tokyo Godfathers, which is kind of a Christmas movie about these 3 homeless people in Tokyo who find a baby who has been abandoned in a dumpster and they sort of go on this adventure through Tokyo to find the mother. And it happens to be Christmas time. I watch this film every year around the holidays. It has become a Christmas tradition. I think it really gets at the spirit of the holiday, more so than a lot of those sort of saturine Christmas specials that we all love. This movie really deals in depth with the issues faced by the homeless in Japan. It's funny, it's heartwarming, it's sad, it's full of heart. It's also written by Keiko Nobumoto, who you may know as the head writer of Cowboy Bebop and Wolf's Rain. So it's incredibly written, incredibly directed, and actually one of the main characters, Hana here, is one of the few great transgender characters in anime and manga. The next category is going to be racial and cultural diversity, and this is another category that Japanese media tends to kind of ignore. So, again, if you have great recommendations for manga featuring well-represented racial and cultural diversity, please put them in a comment below. I'd love to hear them, and I'm sure other people would too. The first one I'm going to mention is A Bride Story by Kaoru Mori. This is a series that focuses on several different nomadic cultures along the Silk Road during the 19th century. It sort of hops between narratives revolving around different brides, but our main couple are this young woman named Amir, who is married to this boy named Karluk, and she is 20 and he is 12, but it's not creepy at all. If you read this, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's, don't worry about it being creepy, because it's not. It's just a cultural difference. This series is just... Of course, it's charming and sweet, but more than anything, Kaoru Mori is known for the detail she puts into her settings, and the respect she has for the cultures that she portrays. This is not condescending at all. It's not glorifying or romanticizing or otherwise, like, putting on a pedestal these cultures. It's just portraying their lives. The next one I'm going to recommend is Barefoot Gen, which is a semi-autobiographical account from a survivor of the Hiroshima A-bomb from the 50s or 60s, I don't remember. It's old though. And this is a 10-volume series about his experiences with the bomb dropping and the American occupation afterwards. But this being a harrowing, important account of these issues is not the reason it's actually on this list, although you should definitely read it for those reasons too. It's on this list because of one of the most prominent characters in the series, Mr. Pak, who is a Korean man who faces discrimination for that fact. Koreans just don't get positive representations in manga or anime very often. Japan still has a major problem with that. But Mr. Pak is great. They really deal with the discrimination that he faces and the ways that he ends up succeeding in whatever small way that he can despite that discrimination. And the anime I'm going to recommend are, first, Michiko and Hachin, which is directed by Shinichiro Watanabe of Cowboy Bebop fame, as well as Sayo Yamamoto, who went on to direct Lupin III, The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, and the upcoming Yuri on Ice. This is an anthology series like Cowboy Bebop or Space Dandy, about a Brazilian woman named Michiko Malandro and her estranged daughter, Hachin, as Michiko sort of drags Hachin along in her desperate search for Hachin's father. But, of course, being an anthology series, every episode is different, using the colorful backdrop of the nitty-gritty Brazilian underground as a setting. Most of the prominent characters are women of color, which is so rare anywhere, but especially in anime. And it's just a fun series. The other one I'm going to recommend is one you've probably already seen, which is Princess Mononoke from director Hayao Miyazaki at Studio Ghibli. A lot of Western fans don't realize how important Prince Ashitaka is as a character, because he is stated to be from the Emishi tribe, and that is the old name of the Ainu people, who are sort of the natives to Japan. And they, much like Native Americans in America, are consistently ignored by Japanese society, Japanese media, and the Japanese government. So having such a prominent film have an Ainu protagonist is really important, and maybe you can go rewatch it with that in mind. The next category is going to be gender and sexual diversity. And first is probably the one everyone expects to see on here, which is Wandering Sun. This is a very important manga series by Takako Shimura, who is known for her very sensitive, realistic handling of LGBT issues, especially among a teenage cast, and this series is of course no exception. This is about a transgender girl named Shu and a transgender boy named Yoshino, who meet in 5th grade when they're both only just starting to question their gender identity, and become friends, and sort of follows them and their, mishaps and the things they learn and the things that they fail to learn throughout late elementary school, middle school, and high school into adulthood. This is one of the best depictions of transgender characters out there, and comes highly recommended. The next one I'm going to recommend is Sakuran by Moyoko Ano, and this is sort of a stand-in for quite a few of Moyoko Ano's series. She is very interested in the lives of sex workers. She is a prominent feminist mangaka who writes manga for older women, and this is a series that is only 1 volume long. This is it. This is the only book you have to buy. About a geisha named Kiyoha, as she sort of navigates the brothels of Edo period Tokyo, which was called Edo at the time, of course. I'm also going to recommend 2 series that you can find from her on Crunchyroll Manga. If you have a Crunchyroll subscription, you have access to their entire manga catalog. So you can go ahead and read these. The first is Buffalo 5 Gals, which is about a group of prostitutes in the wild, wild west of America who escape their abusive brothel and try to strike out on their own. And the other one is Memoirs of Amorous Gentlemen, about a French prostitute in the 19th century. And all 3 of these series are wonderful depictions of sex workers and their lives and their struggles and their triumphs. The next one I'm going to recommend is Girlfriends by Milk Morinaga. This is a great Yuri title to start with, Yuri being manga about lesbian relationships. Now, most of the Yuri manga you're going to find out there is actually written by men for a male audience. This is one of those examples by a lesbian author, Milk Morinaga. All of her titles are incredibly adorable, and this is no exception, and this is probably my favorite that I've read so far, and therefore the one I would recommend. And it's only 2 volumes long, so you just have to buy 2 books. The next one is going to be on the other side of that spectrum, I guess. What Did You Eat Yesterday by Fumi Yoshinaga. This is a foodie manga about a gay couple. He's a lawyer and he's a hairdresser. His hobby is cooking, so he cooks dinner for them every night, and we get a detailed recipe to go along with that. They just both enjoy eating it together, and it's about how food connects us, and it's about just this couple and them going through their issues, some of which are specific to them as a gay couple, but most of which are just typical couple issues that everyone has to go through. And it's just a really down-to-earth and realistic portrayal of a gay couple who are adults, who have been together for 8 years, and the only reason they're not married is because they can't do so legally in Japan. And it's just really refreshing in that regard. The next one I'm going to recommend is a very important anthology, and that is Massive, Gay Erotic Manga and the Men Who Make It. This is one book, and it is meant to be sort of a comprehensive introduction to the genre of gay komi or gay manga in Japan, which you may know as bara, but as some of the interviews in this book say, you probably shouldn't use that word. It's not a nice word. Gay komi is manga by gay men for a gay male audience. It is mostly pornographic, but there's a lot being done in that genre right now, and it's obviously a really important genre that I'm so glad that Massive Comics is making more available here. This book includes a lot of short stories from some of the most prominent gay komi artists working right now, including like Gengoro Tagame and Mentaiko, as well as interviews with the creators and academic essays on the topic of gay manga. It's just an anthology that's well worth your time and well worth buying. I will mention that most of the comics in here are very explicit. Like I said, most gay manga right now is pornographic, so if that's something you're not okay with, this isn't the anthology for you. But if you're okay with that, and I hope you are, please give this anthology a shot. The last two manga I'm going to recommend for this category are one that is coming out in the next year that I'm very excited about, and one that you can buy from Massive Comics' website very easily, but is not available in English. So that one first is Ototo no Otto, or My Brother's Husband, by Gengoro Tagame. This is his first non-explicit manga, and is about a single father whose little brother has passed away, and he's been estranged from him for years, but he has to sort of face up to it when his brother's husband, a Canadian man named Mike, shows up at his door one day. He's very homophobic at first, but it's sort of him living together with Mike and his little daughter, who is an excellent character. I love her. Him sort of learning to accept his little brother and his little brother's husband. Of course, it's very important because even What Did You Eat Yesterday is by a female creator. Fumi Yoshinaga is a woman. My Brother's Husband is by, actually a gay man, so that's really important. The other one is going to be another one from Takako Shimura, who did Wandering Sun, and that is Sweet Blue Flowers, or Aoi Hana, which was recently licensed by Viz for English release sometime in the next year. And this is a yuri manga about two girls at a girls' school, and it's one of the best yuri manga that I've read. It's so realistic and poignant, just like Wandering Sun. Please be on the lookout for that. It's incredible that it's getting a release. And then the anime I'm going to recommend are both from the same director, and if you watch anime and are interested in LGBT issues at all, you probably know what these are. This is a classic, Revolutionary Girl Utena, from director Kunihiko Ikuhara. This is about a girl named Utena Tenjo, who is saved by a prince when she was a little girl, and decides she wants to become a prince after that point. We see her in high school at Otori Academy, and the ring that she has, that the prince gave her, causes her to be entered in duels with members of the student council, who are also duelists, over the ownership of a woman known as the Rose Bride, named Himemiya, and Utena wins the duel with the current owner of the Rose Bride in the first episode and becomes engaged to her. And this series is revolutionary in more than just the title, as it sort of talks about the inherent sort of oppressiveness of the idea of princes and princesses as the masculine and feminine ideal. And, of course, it has a lot of lesbians in it. This is a masterpiece, and really everyone should watch it. Even if it ends up not being your style, because it is... Ikuhara is a surrealist. The other is his most recent series, which is Yuri Kuma Arashi. This is a hard series to describe, but it is very much about the treatment and oppression of lesbian women in Japanese society, and how lesbian depictions in the media contribute to that oppression. It also has cute bears in it. The final category is going to be mental and physical disability. And the first one is again going to be the most popular choice, which is Full Metal Alchemist. This series you've probably heard of if you know anything about manga. It's one of the most popular shonen series out there, but it also stars a disabled protagonist. He is missing both his right arm and his left leg, and the series does deal with sort of the struggles that come along with that. Of course, anyone you talk to would probably recommend this series to you, so that includes me. The next one is going to be another one that's quite popular right now, and that is A Silent Voice, which is 7 volumes long. This is about this boy, Shoya, who in middle school is a horrible bully, and has made it his mission in life to torment this new transfer student, a girl named Shoko, who is deaf. She gets bullied so much that she transfers to another school, and after which point the class turns on Shoya, and the bully becomes the bullied. We skip ahead a few years to when Shoya is a senior in high school, and we see him sort of getting his affairs together so that he can go jump off a bridge. One of the last things he wants to do before he ends his life is to apologize to Shoko in sign language, which he has spent the last few years learning specifically for this purpose. But when he goes to talk to Shoko, she's so happy to finally meet someone who can speak to her in a way that she understands, which is something not even her mother can do, that she ends up forgiving him enough to talk to him again. And they strike up a sort of unlikely friendship. And this deals with issues of disability and bullying culture as an institutional and culturally reinforced thing. And it's just an incredibly sensitive, beautiful series with a unique art style. It just got a movie from Kyoto Animation, which I heard is terrible, so that's a shame. Everything I've heard says it's a desecration of the source material, but the source material is incredible. And I believe you can still read all of this in Crunchyroll manga as well, so if you don't want to go out and buy the series, you can just read it with your Crunchyroll subscription. The next series is the out-of-print series I mentioned. This is kind of hard to find online, and I myself don't own all of the volumes. I don't own Volume 1, which is why I'm going to show you the last one, Volume 8, instead. And that is With the Light, Raising an Autistic Child. And this is a josei series aimed at adult women, focusing on a young mother named Sachiko, whose first child, a boy named Hikaru, is nonverbal autistic. And this is meant to be really an informational series for people who have autistic children or who don't know what autism is. And it's just a really sensitive portrayal of Hikaru as well as his friends in the special education class. I learned a lot reading this, and it's also just really entertaining. It can be a little melodramatic at times, but I don't know, I think that makes it more entertaining to read. Unfortunately, it was supposed to follow Hikaru all the way into adulthood, but it only gets into his early high school days because Keiko Tobe, the author, tragically passed away. The last book, actually, she was so diligent in wanting to get this published that she created storyboards for a quick ending to the series just so it would have some sort of conclusion. And this final book, Volume 8, includes those storyboards so that you get a complete story. Again, this is only 8 volumes long, and for such large volumes, most of the books are about twice this size, but they're only $12 retail. As I said, some of them are kind of hard to find. But if you can find them, I implore you to give this a shot. Certainly request it from your library. That's where I found this series. I would never have heard of it if it hadn't have been at my library. The next series I'm going to recommend is Orange by Ichigo Takano. This is 2 volumes long. It's actually 5 in Japan, but we got omnibuses over here, so you only need to buy 2 books. This is about a girl named Naho who receives a letter from herself 10 years in the future telling her that a boy she's going to meet that day, Kakeru, is no longer with them, and that she's always regretted it, and she wants her high school self to change it. This series is so good with its depiction of depression and suicide. I would not be surprised if Ichigo Takano has not at some point been touched by suicide in some way, because this deals with it so well. If you're looking for a short series that deals with depression and deals with it very respectfully and realistically, this is it. And the last manga I'm going to recommend is my favorite manga of all time. And that is Fruits Basket, which is getting re-released by Yen Press right now. I have those editions in Japanese, but I don't have them in English, so I'm just showing you my Tokyopop first volume. But you can go out and buy this series right now, which hasn't been something I can say for years, and it's great. This series is about a girl named Toru, who, after her mother dies, leaving her orphaned, goes to live with her grandfather, but he decides to remodel his house so that new relatives can move in with them. And he says, oh, hey, can you go, stay with a friend for a few weeks while this is going on? And she's like, of course. Oh, but I can't possibly trouble either of my two best friends. So she decides to go live in a tent in the woods instead, because that's the kind of person she is. But it turns out that the woods she is living in are private property, owned by the Soma family, specifically the cousin of the most popular boy in school, Yuki. And the cousin's name is Shigure, and they find her living in the woods in a tent, and offer to let her stay with them. Very quickly, with the entrance of a third Soma member, Kyo Soma, she learns a terrible secret about them, that 13 members of the Soma family are possessed by the vengeful spirits of the Chinese zodiac, the 12 animals plus the cat who was left out. And they turn into their animal when their bodies are weak or when they hug someone of the opposite sex. That sounds like a silly premise, and it is, but this series isn't really about that. It's about the various sort of traumas that the members of the Soma zodiac go through as a result of their curse, which is really a metaphor for everything that sets you back as a teenager. And specifically for bullying and abuse, there is pretty much good parents don't exist in Fruits Basket. So you see characters who are coming from all sorts of different troubled home lives, and characters who are struggling with bullying, characters who are struggling with depression, anxiety, even gender dysphoria. And one of the main themes of the series is about empathy, never judging a person unless you've walked a mile in their shoes. Always giving people the benefit of the doubt, which is a beautiful, beautiful message that I think we all need to hear from time to time. And finally, I'll finish with a couple of anime recommendations because this is a very long video. And the first, going along with the Fullmetal Alchemist manga, I will also recommend the original Fullmetal Alchemist anime from 2003, which has a much different story from the manga, but focuses on the same core characters, specifically because this series does deal more with issues of post-traumatic stress disorder. Particularly one of the main characters, Roy Mustang, is a very good portrayal of PTSD, and he's just a great character, one of my favorites of all time. And there's also, this series is a pretty obvious commentary on the Iraq War, which was happening at the time this came out, and has some very seething commentary on racism. The manga doesn't really go into the race stuff, but this does, and does so really well. So, absolutely recommend both of them. Everyone has their favorite Fullmetal Alchemist, and all versions of Fullmetal Alchemist are worth getting into, so I'm just sort of promoting both of them. And the last one I'm going to recommend is Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is one of the most famous anime series of all time. It's about depression. And it was extremely cathartic to me when I was in a really deep depression fairly recently. I've seen people on Manga YouTube recently who are struggling with what order they should watch the series in, and I thought I'd give my 2 cents. And my recommendation is to watch the series in the order that it came out, which is the series first, Neon Genesis Evangelion, the TV series, which is hard to find because it's out of print, but you can find it. That means all 26 episodes. Watch the ending as well, even though it's a bit of a clusterfuck. If you don't know the story behind this series, it was directed by Hideaki Anno during a time in his life when he was in a very deep depression, and this is his commentary on depression as he is going through it. And during the last third of the series, he had a nervous breakdown, and you can tell because they run out of money, the pacing is all over the place, everything is rushed, and the ending wasn't what he originally envisioned, but it was what he needed at the time, and it was what I needed at the time that I watched it as well, when I was just coming out of a very deep depression. I think that has value. So I would say watch the series first. The first 2/3 are some of the best Monster of the Week stuff that's ever been done. It's fantastic. I love the angels to pieces. Next, I would recommend watching the movie, The End of Evangelion, which is an alternate ending to the series, and really sort of a commentary on that depression from Anno as he's coming out of it. So he's saying, oh man, wow, I was such an awful person when I was in that depression. And we see a more realistic, perhaps, idea of what a character like Shinji would really end up like what would really happen if the Deus Ex Machina of the series ending didn't happen. And it's much more cynical, but it also is beautiful. It's a work of artistry that is so amazing. There's imagery in that movie that I will never forget. It is permanently etched into my brain space. And so I really think every anime fan or animation fan owes it to themselves to watch that film just for the artistry. And then I recommend watching the Rebuild movies, because these were made 10 years later by a person who is 10 years out of a depression. And this is him looking back on the series and looking back on himself during that time and commenting on it. Like, you should not watch the Rebuild movies first because they are very directly a commentary on the original series. They're saying, okay, this was what I thought when I was in this very specific, myopic, skewed brain space of a severely depressed person. And this is how I feel now that I'm out of that, and I realize how skewed my perception of the world was because of my mental illness. And it's a beautiful experience to watch those movies after watching the series, because in the series, true human connection isn't possible. Characters are never shown together in the same frame. Even if they are, they're never on equal footing. It's not a place, it's not a world where people can truly connect, and that's how it feels when you're very depressed. But coming out of that, in the Rebuild movies, true connection is possible, and characters are shown in the same frame, and you get this content between Kaworu and Shinji that is not just two people connecting, but just downright fucking romantic. And it's incredible. Then I would recommend checking out the manga, just as an alternate take on the original series from someone else, who is the character designer Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. It's interesting, but it's different, and they're all worth watching. Those are my recommendations for diverse manga, and thank you for watching. That turned out very long. Thank you for watching, and happy reading. Bye.